Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on Spider-Man Remastered using the GTX 1050 Ti. We're going to be starting it off with 1080p on the very low preset. I won't be trying out 900p and 720p or 1440p probably. We're going to focus on 1080p, but I'm going to be testing out all the presets and I'll be trying out FSR as well, just to find the best preset and the best settings as well. Alright, let's go. Starting it off with 1080p on the very low preset. We are getting 44 FPS so far. Not bad, but we are playing on the very low settings, so also not the best either. Not getting any stuttering, it's running quite smooth. Cars look very blurry, that's the one thing that I realized. On the very low settings, the cars look very blurry and there's heaps of popping. You can see as you get close to the cars, you can see that the quality actually improves. So I would avoid playing on the very low settings. Alright. Pushing it up to low settings. Playing on very low settings, it just doesn't look good, so we're gonna avoid it and push up to low settings. We are getting some pop-ins still. It's not as major as what it was before on the very low settings, but performance is also very similar. We didn't lose too much FPS from playing on low settings, which is not surprising because this is how it actually worked out with the other graphics cards as well. Where you see a massive dip is when you go up to high settings. That's when you actually see a massive drop off in performance. Low, medium, very low, very similar to each other. Each of them are slightly more intensive than the other ones, but when you go up to high and very high, it's a massive drop off. Still, game's feeling quite good, not laggy at all, no stutters, and we're getting 40 FPS. We can use FSR at this point, but I think the best place to use FSR is around medium settings. Medium to high settings, I think, is when you want to use FSR. As you can see, FPS is slightly lower than low settings. We're sitting in the high 30s now instead of the low 40s, which isn't bad. This game can be played at 30 FPS without an issue. And I think medium settings might be the sweet spot for this card. I will try to get 60 FPS, but I don't know if that's possible without the game looking bad. Let's go ahead and stand here. We're getting 40 FPS flat, medium settings 1080p, FSR 2.0. I'm gonna start it off with quality, and then go down. Okay, we gained 8 FPS from that. That's actually really good. And honestly, this looks pretty good. For 1080p, this looks pretty good. Our balance looks good as well. We are still falling to the 40s though, which is kind of sad. Let's go and swing for a little bit. Okay, we're getting 40 FPS still. That's... And what I just realized just then was when you swing super quick, you do get some smearing from FSR. It's not too major, you have to pay attention to it to actually see it, but just something extra to actually know. I think 30 to 40 FPS might be the spot for us to hang around. I will try playing at 900p I think at this point, since we can't get 60 with FSR. So we're getting 30 FPS at high settings. Like I said, massive drop off point once you go up to high settings. We were getting 38 FPS on medium, and now we're sitting in the low 30s. Low to mid 30s. Wow, we're getting some massive FPS drops right now. Stuttering heaps when I pan the camera. VRAM is basically maxed out, sitting at 3.5 gigs out of 4. And when we swing, we are falling into the high 20s. Feels very choppy at this point. Enabling FSR. And we're getting 40 FPS now instead of 30. And let's see if it stutters and if the FPS drops when I pan the camera. Does a little bit, but it's not as bad as what it was before. Start swinging around. We're getting 20 FPS, 28 FPS when we're swinging around, so we're actually holding 40, playing at high settings. Alright, using the very high preset now. No FSR. And yeah, very choppy. We're getting 25 FPS pretty much. Running around. Swinging, we are getting over 30, but still super stuttery. It was quite laggy. Alright, playing at 900p medium settings now. We are getting 40 to 50 FPS, which is a pretty good starting ground. We are getting pretty close to that 60 FPS mark, so I got high hopes that with FSR, we can actually hit 60. I don't know if it will be stable 60, but hopefully it is. I tried enabling NIS, and the overlay normally turns on and tells you if it's actually running, but we can't see the overlay in the game, and there's no way for me to tell if it's running or not. So we're just going to assume that it's not running, and we're running at 900p native. Alright, enabling FSR at balance settings, we are getting the high 40s to mid 50s, which is pretty good, but not quite 60 yet. Now, the one thing I just realized is that when you pan the camera around and the light hits his face, you see a bit of ghosting, or a bit of a trail with the previous image. It's a bit distracting. When you're playing the game normally, you don't really see it, but when I was standing still, I just saw it happening when I was panning the camera around. Now, while we're getting good FPS, the image quality is not the best at this point. Playing at 900p, FSR is enabled as well on top of that. So, we are getting some blurriness now, especially at balanced FSR. So if you're playing on a small screen, this won't be as obvious to you, but on those bigger screens, it will be far more obvious. We are still getting some dips into the 40s, unfortunately. We can't hold a steady 50. But those dips aren't causing us any stuttering or any inconsistencies. It feels fine when swinging. Since we can't get a 60 FPS lock with this, I'm going to go ahead and play at 1080p, and I'm going to try to get the best quality out of the actual game while getting a playable frame rate that isn't laggy or unplayable. So we're playing pretty much at a mix of medium to high preset, using high texture quality. Shutter quality is still on low. Screen space is enabled. Level of detail is high. Stroke density and cloud density are turned down to very low, and there's hair quality, weather effect as well, medium. And as you can see, the game looks fantastic on these settings. No blurriness. You can see a bit of smearing with the around the head still with FSR, but honestly not that big of a deal. And this will give us an FPS of 35 to 45 FPS. Would you rather play at 50 to 60 FPS with some dips into the 40s? But the quality is going to look far worse. You will get some blurriness. Or you rather play the game at the highest quality that you can. 1080p native. Around high to medium settings. But at 35 to 45 FPS. Alright, that's it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, give it a like. And sub to the channel, we help as well. Alright, see you next time.